Alright, so in today's video, we're going to be reviewing the Winter's Expansion DLC. I'm also going to be talking about Shadow of Rose. Now, this is a spoiler-free review. I will be doing a spoiler review video later on. And I actually don't want to waste your guys' time, so I'll actually tell you right now, do I think it's worth buying? No. I don't think this DLC is worth buying at full price. I do think that you should wait for a sale. Now, the weird thing about this whole Winter's Expansion is that the Shadow of Rose, in my opinion, is probably the worst part of the whole DLC. And it's kind of weird because that was kind of the main selling point. I actually thought that the mercenaries, additional orders, and as well as the third person were just going to be like little, they were supposed to be kind of just like, the cherry on top. They weren't supposed to be the meat of the DLC. But it turns out that those little side dishes, I guess, or whatever you want to call them, those little side DLC were actually the best parts, in my opinion. As mentioned, third person was actually surprisingly good. Now, the interesting thing is that when the game released, I basically ran through the whole Mercenaries DLC just to get all of the trophies. I never looked back. I got all of them. Never looked back. Well, at the last stage, I got like an S. And I think that was just enough for me to get the trophy. To get a double S, I did get a double S for all of the other maps, but the last map I wasn't able to. I think like I was shy by like 20,000 points. It was something really minuscule. And I was like, okay, well, I don't really want to play this again. I got an S, I got the trophy. All right, I'm not looking back. I'm never going back to the Mercenaries because it just wasn't fun. It was always missing other characters, which I honestly thought was quite strange. But with the new DLC's additional orders, from them adding other characters like Heisenberg, Lady Dimitrescu, and as well as Chris, it actually made the game really fun. Now, I actually started off my playthrough by just starting off as Chris and just going off and playing the Mad Village, I think number 2, which is the hardest map. Now, they did add 2 other maps, which was Bloody Village and Bloody Village 2. I didn't play those. I only played as Chris just to get that double S that I never got before. Well, turns out I actually got a triple S after my 4th or 5th try. And I thought that was really shocking. And to be honest, it wasn't a pain. It wasn't a chore. That's one of the things that I actually didn't like about the old Mercenaries, or the original Mercenaries that came out with Resident Evil Village, was the fact that when you played the harder maps, it just got really tedious. If you missed your combo, it could just screw over your whole game. But I actually really like the fact that with Chris, they basically changed the rules with him by making him just a total beast. I thought it was really cool the fact that, Chris had, his straight and also his hook. Those are really cool concepts in the game. The fact that you couldn't heal with Chris, but he was just basically like an all-out tank, fit the character really well, and it actually made the whole mode a lot more fun. As mentioned, when I first played the harder maps in the Mercenaries mode, I always thought it was kind of a drag. It was kind of just playing, it just felt like doing chores, to be honest. It wasn't fun. That's why, I actually posted on my community, I did a whole poll a couple months ago, and I actually asked a lot of you guys, a lot of my viewers, hey, have you guys actually continued playing the Mercenaries, or did you just play it as soon as it released and never touched it again? Well, not surprising, a lot of people just played it when it released and then they never looked at it ever again. And so, yeah, I do think that they did a great job. Now, I only played like a couple of matches with Chris, but I actually did really well. As mentioned, I actually played on the hardest difficulty and I got a triple S only on my 4th or 5th try of playing, and I actually had a really great time. So for that reason, I think it's a great success. I do actually want to continue playing as Chris and get triple S's on everything. And then after, I think once you've unlocked and you've played all of the maps, which as mentioned, I haven't been able to do, then you will be able to unlock Heisenberg and Lady Dimitrescu, which I'm actually kind of hyped for because as mentioned, the Mercenaries mode was really boring before. So to be honest, that huge addition to the Mercenaries mode was kind of a shock. I was not expecting that, but it made a lot of sense. And I'm actually really glad that they went back and fixed that mode. Now, moving on to third person, and I don't really want to spend too much time here because let's be honest, third person is basically the norm for Resident Evil. I mean, that's how it was since the start of when Resident Evil 1 first released back in 1996. So it's a great addition. It actually makes the game a lot better, in my opinion. I think that's how Resident Evil should be. Well, in reality, I think they should actually give you the option of whether you want to play in VR, like in first person, or in third person, which is exactly what they did with this DLC. And as well, it's also been confirmed that Resident Evil 4 Remake, which releases in March of 2023, they already announced that that's actually going to be compatible with the PlayStation VR 2 headset. So I think that's the way to go. The fact that they allow the player to choose, do you want to play this in third person? Do you want to play it in first person? That's how it should be. And obviously Capcom is learning, and yeah, they're not just going to keep the whole game locked into first person. So yeah, I think that's definitely the way to go. I think the only downside for a third person mode was the fact that you can't see Ethan's face. So if you were expecting that, you shouldn't be expecting that with the DLC. They already stated a long time ago, I think I covered it in a news video, that, the director, he was basically saying, no, I'm going to be stubborn about this. I'm not going to go out and show Ethan's face, because that was the vision we had for Resident Evil 7. Anyways, so that's the only downside that I have for third person mode. But all in all, I think it's a great addition for Resident Evil 8. All right, so now we're actually moving on to the Shadow of Rose part of the Winter's Expansion DLC, but I do want to preface and state that I'm not going to go too much into detail, since this is a spoiler-free review. Now, one of the funny thing is that roughly around 2 months prior to the DLC's release, I actually did a video detailing all of my concerns for the Shadow of Rose, since Capcom released early footage of the DLC, I think in the Tokyo Game Show. That's when I released that video that basically detailed everything, all of my concerns. And the sad thing is that video, all of the concerns that I laid out, it actually turned out to be true. So one of the things that I basically stated in that video was, I don't really like the fact that it's going too much into the paranormal side, into the supernatural, magical side of like, Resident Evil has never been like that. It's never been with powers. And one of the things that I stated in that video is that if anything, it kind of felt like a ripoff of Parasite Eve 2. Now, this is a game that probably came out, I think maybe like in 2000. I'm not sure. I was really little when I played it. I did play it later on. It's a great game, but that game was heavily inspired with Resident Evil. But the main difference with that game was that your character could literally get powers where they could literally burn stuff. I think they had like a psychic ability. It was just like Resident Evil with powers. And that's exactly what I felt with Shadow of Rose. If anything, as mentioned, I thought it was a complete ripoff. And again, it doesn't belong in the Resident Evil universe. So that's one of the reasons why I did not like this DLC. Another thing to note as well is that the story is incredibly predictable, and it was just really lame. Now, another thing I should mention is that I actually played the Shadow of Rose twice. And yeah, both times it took me roughly around, the first time was 3 hours, and I actually went live when I did that. By the way, if this is your first time here, consider subscribing, because I post Resident Evil videos every single week, and I also go live every Saturday. But anyways, going back to what I was saying, yeah, it took me 3 hours on my first attempt, and I actually played it on hardcore. Now, that's another weird thing that I have to mention as well. I don't understand why the game didn't give me a higher difficulty for hardcore. Now, when I first played it, like new game, I played it, I thought, oh, okay, maybe I have to play the game and then Village of Shadows difficulty, which was the extra hard, or I guess the extra hard difficulty for Resident Evil 8 unlocks. And that wasn't the case. Yeah, when I beat the game on hardcore, they didn't give me a higher difficulty to play it in, which I thought was really strange. So yeah, that's one of the things that I actually didn't like also was, yeah, I thought it was really easy. Now, I will state, without spoiling any of the story, the first area of the DLC, I actually thought it was okay. I don't think there was anything wrong with it in particular. One of the things that I will say is that I actually didn't like the fact that there wasn't any weapon variety. So I'll just tell you right now, you only get a handgun and a shotgun. Like, I'm pretty sure that's the only weapons you get in the thing. There's no customizing. There's nothing like that. So that was weird. I don't understand why they chose to do that. And that second area, that's where the game just really just crashes and just tanks, in my opinion. That's where all of the fun kind of just goes out the window. It wasn't fun anymore. Even the final boss, in my opinion, was really boring. I didn't really like it at all. There was a lot of reused stuff that they used from Resident Evil 8. Again, I don't want to go too much in details since I don't want to spoil the game. But yeah, that's where the second area, that's where the game, just for me, I was like, dude, I'm done. Like, I'm really done with this. This doesn't even feel like I'm playing anymore. It feels like I'm like, I don't want to spoil it, but I actually will go into detail as to all of the things that I didn't like in specific in that spoiler review that I'm doing after. Now, I did state before that there was no weapon variety. The only thing that you get is just a handgun and a shotgun. Now, on top of that, another weird thing that they also included with this DLC is that there wasn't a lot of enemies. You know, the only enemies that you fight is just the generic new molded zombie kind of thing that are kind of like a ripoff of the Harry Potter Dementors, like the ones that suck, you know, Harry Potter's face off or whatever. That's exactly what you had in this game. Now, I actually don't know what the deal is with the one of the developers that's clearly a Potterhead, a Harry Potter fan, because he, you know what, that's two instances now of Harry Potter being placed, Harry Potter inspired enemies or Harry Potter inspired storytelling that have been placed in Resident Evil 8. But I don't know what the deal with that is, but I don't know who that worker is, but just stop. All right? Stop adding Harry Potter stuff. And I actually talk about the other Harry Potter thing in my other video where I talk about 5 things that I don't like about Resident Evil 8. I did think it was kind of lame that I think there was only one type of enemy. Now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, you only basically fight one type of enemy. You fight a mini boss, which is a different type of enemy that we've never seen before, and then that's it. Like, that's it. I'm not going to spoil the final boss or anything like that, but yeah, that was also pretty lame in this DLC. Now, the other thing that I thought was weird, and I thought I would mention it in this video, was, and let me know down in the comments if you guys actually encountered this. So actually, when you're playing the DLC, there's several instances where Rose has to use her power. Now, again, that's not a spoiler. If you've known anything about the game, you know that that's basically, you know, that was discussed in Resident Evil 8 at the end, or even throughout the whole game of Resident Evil 8, that Rose has powers. Now, in the DLC, there's certain areas where you have to use your powers to unlock stuff. Again, I don't want to spoil anything, but there's certain areas where you have to use your powers, and I noticed that the range was really off sometimes. Like, I noticed sometimes I would use my power to try to do something, right, to move on in the story, and it's like, no, it's not. It doesn't register your power. And it's like, well, what's the problem? And it's like, oh yeah, you're just like a couple of centimeters away, so you just have to get a little closer for it to work. I thought that was really weird. I don't know. That's basically just the game design. I don't know why they did that. It didn't really make much sense, but there was an issue that I ran into quite a bit where I was like, why isn't this working? Work. But it's like, no, you have to be just a little closer. I was like, what? Why did my powers work here, but if I'm over here, it doesn't? Like, that was weird. I don't know how else to explain it. If you've played the game, again, let me know down in the comments if you also thought that was weird. I thought it was kind of a nuisance. Yeah, there was several instances where I was like, come on, like, seriously, it doesn't work here, but if I move a little bit, it works. I don't know. Now, there's another weird thing that I have to mention as well that I kept encountering, and I'll actually show you right now footage of it. But there was a really weird thing, and I thought maybe it was, okay, maybe I'm playing on hardcore, so the game is doing this, but it almost felt really strange. I've never encountered this for Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3 remakes, or the Resident Evil 8. But for Shadow of Rose, I thought it was really strange when you were aiming at an enemy, and if that enemy got close enough, like not close, like he was kind of far, but I noticed that if an enemy gets like close, like to your bubble, or I guess to your, I don't know how else to say it, I'm not a game developer, but there was like a weird mechanic where if the enemy was like 2 meters away from you, it would almost be like if you were trying to shoot and you tried to run away after, Rose would actually move incredibly slow. She would start moving like her grandma. And I was like, what's the deal with that? I don't understand what that is. Now, again, I thought maybe it's because I played the game in hardcore, but as mentioned before, I did play the game twice. Now, the first time I actually played it on hardcore. The second time I played it on casual, since I wanted to collect all of the cutscenes so I could show you guys in this review. But yeah, I thought that was really strange. I don't know if it's really weird to explain. Yeah, if there's an enemy that reaches Rose, there's like a certain point of no return where if you try to run, if you try to quick turn, you're still going to get grabbed. I don't know what that is, I don't know what the game developers did with that, but yeah, they should never do that again, because to be honest, I thought it was kind of cheap. But as mentioned at the beginning of the video, yeah, I don't think you should buy this DLC at full price. I definitely think you should wait for a sale. Again, in my opinion, I think Shadow of Rose was the worst part of this DLC. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. Like, if you're a Resident Evil fan, you should not play it, or just play it once and then never touch it again. That's why, you should just wait for a sale, if I'm being honest. The weird thing about this DLC is that the parts of the DLC that I thought were going to be like the most boring were actually the best part of the winter expansion. Like, Shadow of Rose was really hyped, and the mercenaries, third person mode, it was kind of understood that, okay, those are just extras. But in reality, that wasn't the case. Those were actually the meat of the DLC, while Shadow of Rose was just awful, in my opinion. If you guys enjoyed the video, then click this video if you guys want to see the 5 things that I hated about Resident Evil 8 Village. It's also worth noting that I actually liked Resident Evil 8 Village. But yeah, thanks for watching.